One mistake. That's all it took to destroy Tony Cottee's football career at West Ham. Life gave him everything until one day someone he trusted stole it from him. Who could it be? And what could they scam Cotte of that he regrets till date? Let's find out. On July 11, 1965, Anthony Richard Cotte was born to a middle-class working family on the outskirts of East London. His father, an insurance broker in the city, went on to establish his own insurance firm in Romford, Essex. According to Tony, the whole family started working for his dad except for him. Tony set his eyes on football, particularly West Ham United. Tony would go on to be one of the best football players of all time. Unfortunately, Tony didn't know what troubles awaited him in the future. From a young age, Tony's parents drilled it into him that he needed to start working as soon as he finished school. And so Tony did. At the age of 15, Tony left school and decided to take up an apprenticeship at West Ham. It was his dream to play for the team. West Ham paid Tony Cottee just £20 a week back then. Since Tony couldn't drive, he used to spend it on bus fares and started learning to manage money at a young age. This was a step in the right direction. His dedication to football and West Ham was unremarkable, but unfortunately, the glamorous lifestyle of being a football player would indeed go to Tony's head, ultimately putting him in debt. But more about Tony Cottee's career at West Ham. Tony continued his apprenticeship for 2 years at West Ham. Tony remembers it all so vividly. It was New Year's Eve, 1983. Tony was invited to travel with the team for the first time. A youthful Tony was looking forward to having the front row seats to watch West Ham in action. John Lyall gave Tony a little nudge. 90 minutes before the game started, Lyall casually asked if Tony would fancy playing for West Ham. The opportunity presented itself out of nowhere. All the cards were in place. At age 17, Tony Cottee made his debut thanks to John Lyall, and as we all know, the rest is history. On New Year's Eve 1983, Tony scored his first ever goal in a 3-0 win against the Tottenham Hotspurs. While others might have thought this was a fluke, it sure wasn't. He was a natural-born prodigy. Following his debut, he made 6 league appearances and went on to score 4 more goals the very same season. During the 1983 to 1984 season, Tony was just 18. Age was just a number to Tony, and he wanted to show West Ham United and the opposition just how good he was. He scored 15 goals that season. From 1984 to 1985, Tony's goal numbers just kept growing. He was on an upward trend. Tony managed 17 First Division goals that season, and by the age of 20, he netted 37 league goals. In 1986, West Ham United was gunning for the winning trophy. Tony scored a total of 20 goals that season. Tony was voted the PFA Young Player of the Year in 1986. West Ham United placed 3rd in the First Division, just shy of 4 points from the title. Liking this nostalgic trip down Tony Cotte's career? Make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And now, back to the video. Tony scored his highest career score of 22 goals from 1986 to 1987, but West Ham United wasn't performing all too well. West Ham United dropped to 15th, then 16th the next year. Tony had now been in the football game for 212 league games and had managed 92 goals. Tony decided to seek prospects elsewhere, and then came a contract from Everton on a golden platter. In 1988, Tony became one of the most expensive players to be signed by a British club. Everton signed Tony for £2.2 million. Everton poured money onto Tony, and Tony delivered on his debut with the team. But that would be the last time we'd get to see Tony Cotte perform in his prime. Moreover, Tony had married his childhood sweetheart, Lorraine. He left a housewife alone with 2 kids at the time, but Tony's hands were tied and was head deep into his football career. The former West Ham striker scored a hat-trick against Newcastle United. Everton won the game 4-0. But despite Tony's best efforts, luck wasn't on his side. Whether it was bad luck or bad team management, Everton saw its worst season in a decade from 1990 to 1991, and 1992 onwards just got even more frustrating. Tony suffered an injury, but still pushed on. For the first time in 9 years, he had scored below 10 goals in a season. Tony later returned to West Ham in an exchange deal with Everton. While West Ham as a whole didn't accomplish anything spectacular, Tony felt at home during his 2-year stay at West Ham United. Tony decided to go international in 1996. He signed for Malaysian club Selangor and won his first trophy at the Malaysian FA club. After a year, Tony signed up for Leicester City. Tony kept pushing. 19 league games and 4 goals at the age of 32. It was with Leicester City that Tony scored that jaw-dropping goal against Manchester United during the UEFA Cup. Retirement was around the corner. Tony knew that all too well. But in the 1999-2000 season, Tony managed to bring home a major trophy in England as Leicester defeated the Tranmere Rovers 2-1 during the Football League Cup final. Tony realised it was time to retire from football. With 214 goals to his name and becoming the 17th highest goalscorer in football, he knew it was time to put his football cleats in the closet. He had no clue what was about to happen, and what all came next flipped his life upside down. Tony's personal life was now all he had. Being a high-profile athlete, it's obvious that tabloids and the mainstream media would dig into Tony's personal life. Of course, magazines and tabloids thrive on gossip, and that's what they did. This led to a few hitches in Tony's marriage, but nothing the couple couldn't patch up, but the underlying resentment and miscommunication stuck with both partners. Despite the distance, the couple kept an open line of communication for the most part. His marriage was intact, but after he hung up his football cleats, things started going downhill. It only surfaced when Tony spent his days at home. He sought out full-time retirement and decided to finally spend time with his wife and children. Going from frequent travels and keeping up with arduous game schedules, which were the lifeline of Tony, he became a sit-at-home dad with his wife Lorraine and 3 kids. She wasn't used to Tony being around the home and had to raise 3 kids on her own while Tony was playing for the big leagues. Tony wanted to spend time with his family, but he wasn't used to sitting idly. Football was everything he had. Living on a reduced income and being home all day, Tony's savings were all he had. His honeypot of savings was emptying. The kids went to a private school and Tony still lived the glamorous lifestyle he once lived the year before. But going from £400,000 a year to completely nothing comes at a price. His wife expected him to get a job as soon as possible, but Tony wanted to enjoy retirement. That came at a price Tony had to pay for dearly. Financial stress started to get the better of him, and his wife started getting distant from Tony. That's why 70% of professional football players end up getting divorced 5 years into retirement. Tony Cottee had to suffer the same fate. From making £5,000 a week to making nothing and still living the same professional football player lifestyle, things didn't pan out so well. Lorraine filed for divorce and took the kids. Things really went south from here. With £150,000 in his pension, Tony couldn't access his account due to divorce proceedings. But this isn't even the worst part. What happened next truly destroyed him. He didn't know what to do, so he trusted the account with his pension pot to a fellow who remains unnamed, and as you could expect, things went south. Tony lost the money, and the individual went to jail. With an ongoing legal case, Tony expects to get the money back, but doesn't know when. For 10 years after his divorce, Tony was forced to make ends meet and couldn't save a shilling or a quid. But some money started rolling in as Tony became a pundit on Sky Sports. He saved up a bit of money. Tony remarried and now lives with his new wife Karen in Southend, Sussex. Tony isn't living it up these days like he used to. Still, he's living a complacent life. All that's left for Tony is to clear his 6-figure mortgage. Rainy days and misfortune are a part and parcel of life. Tony Cottee had lived his life to the fullest. That's a wrap for Tony Cottee's prolific football career. He became one of the highest-paid football players of his time and has a neat little gig at Sky Sports as a pundit. Tony has seen good times and bad times, but he still hasn't given up on the game of life. Tony serves as an inspiration to many up-and-coming football players and football fans alike. With all that said, what should we cover next? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.